Hare Krishna. Good sign. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa, Padurikacharya Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Padurikacharya Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 20th day of December 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in the 9th chapter entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge, text number 29, which is at the top of page 410 in most of your books. Do you see it? You have the different page number. No, you have, I think you have the same one. You can always tell by the very, very, very thin margins. You have a different book.
Yes, I got it.
You have it, but you have it. And you both have it. Okay. All right. Text 29, very important verse. Samoham
Samoham
sarvabhuteshu
sarvabhuteshu
name dvesho
medvesho
stinaparaha
stinapriyaha
ye bhajanti
ye bhajanti
tumam bhaktya
mam bhaktya
mahite
maite
teshu
teshu
chapyaham
chapyaham
samoham sarvabhuteshu
samoham sarvabhuteshu
name dvesho stinapriyaha
name dvesho stinapriyaha
ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya
ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
mahite teshu chapyaham
maite teshu chapyaham
samoham sarvabhuteshu
samoham sarvabhuteshu
name dvesho stinapriyaha
name dvesho stinapriyaha
ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya
bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
mahite teshu chapyaham
maite teshu chapyaham
samoham sarvabhuteshu
samoham sarvabhuteshu
name dvesho stinapriyaha
name dvesho stinapriyaha
ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya
bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
mahite teshu chapyaham.
maite teshu chapyaham.
Go ahead, Vrindavan.
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
dvesho stinapriya
name dvesho stinapriyaha
ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya
ite teshu chapyaham
mahite teshu chapyaham.
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
name devasyo stinapriyaha
name dvesho stinapriyaha
ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya
ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya
maite teshu chapyaham.
mahite teshu chapyaham.
Samoham sarvabhuteshu
Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dvesho stinapriyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mahite teshu chapyaham. Ladies. Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dvesho stinapriyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mahite teshu chapyaham. Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dvesho stinapriyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mahite teshu chapyaham. Word by word. Samaha, equally disposed. Aham, I, sarvabhuteshu, to all living entities. Na, no one, me, to me, veshyaha, hateful. Asti is, na, not, priyaha, dear. Yea, those who, bhajanti, render transcendental service, to, but, mam, unto me, bhaktya, in devotion. Mahi are in me, te, such persons. Teshu, in them, cha, also, api, certainly, aham, I. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Purport. One may question here that if Krishna is equal to everyone, and no one is his special friend, then why does he take a special interest in the devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental service? But this is not discrimination. It is natural. Any man in this material world may be very charitably disposed, yet he has a special interest in his own children. The Lord claims that every living entity, in whatever form, is his son, and so he provides everyone with a generous supply of the necessities of life. He is just like a cloud which pours rain all over, regardless of whether it falls on rock or land or water. But for his devotees, he gives specific attention. Specific, Prabhupada often means special. It's the same idea. If you look at the practically synonyms. He gives special attention. Such devotees are mentioned here. They are always in Krishna consciousness, and therefore they are always transcendently situated in Krishna. The very phrase Krishna consciousness suggests that those who are in such consciousness are living transcendentalists, situated in Him. The Lord says here distinctly, Mahite, they are in me. Naturally, as a result, the Lord is also in them. This is reciprocal. This also explains the words, Ye yatamam papadyante, tang sathaiva bhajamyaham. Whoever surrenders unto me, proportionately I take care of him. This transcendental reciprocation exists because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. When a diamond is set in a golden ring, it looks very nice. The gold is glorified, and at the same time the diamond is glorified. The Lord and the living entity eternally glitter, and when a living entity becomes inclined to the service of the Supreme Lord, he looks like gold. The Lord is a diamond, and so this combination is very nice. Living entities in a pure state are called devotees. The Supreme Lord becomes the devotee of His devotees. If a reciprocal relationship is not present between the devotee and the Lord, then there is no personalist philosophy. In the impersonal philosophy, there is no reciprocation between the Supreme and the living entity. But in the personalist philosophy, there is. The example is often given that the Lord is like a desire tree, and whatever one wants from this desire tree, the Lord supplies. But here the explanation is more complete. The Lord is here stated to be partial to the devotees. This is the manifestation of the Lord's special mercy to the devotees. The Lord's reciprocation should not be considered to be under the law of karma. It belongs to the transcendental situation in which the Lord and His devotees function. Devotional service to the Lord is not any activity of this material world. It is part of the spiritual world, where eternity, bliss, and knowledge predominate.
I love this verse. Krishna is so kind.
Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So before we proceed, can you go back there and just check, make sure that the kitchen door is closed? And also, there's a door here and a door here in the altar. And if those are open, then whatever's going on in the altar area is also. So that would help my concentration. So, this verse is very significant. Krishna is revealing his inner attitude toward living entities in general. Now, it may seem, how does this work? Because we know that the living entities who are here in this material world are certainly in a suffering state compared to the living entities who are in Goloka, Vrindavan, Vaikuntha. So how is that not partiality? The answer is that everyone is getting his just deserts. There's this phrase in English, right? And of course everyone spells it D-E-S-S-E-R-T-S, but that's wrong. The word desert is a noun with one S, meaning what you deserve. I discovered that many years ago. So meaning that whatever situation we are in, whether it's one of material happiness, material suffering, or transcendental happiness, it is exactly appropriate to our own activities, what we have done. This is the whole meaning of the law of karma. The fact that on the material plane, there are unbreakable laws. I mean, you can break them, but then you have to suffer the consequences. So the punishment is infallible. We once put together a book called The Law of Nature and Infallible Justice. And it means that there's no mistakes like they have in material courts, where you have judges can be bought off, or the lawyer is incompetent, or all kinds of mistakes are made, and the guilty get off and the innocent are punished sometimes, right? But what does it say? Karmana daivanetena jantu dehopapatiye. This is a verse by Lord Kapila Dev, I believe, describing the process of transmigration. Karmana daivanetena. Daivanetena means the supervision of the Daiva, divine. It's ultimately Krishna, but he uses his agents who are also there, the demigods, to give you just the precise birth that you're due according to your previous activities, a mix of pious and impious activities like that. So that Daiva nature, nature comes from the word nature comes from the word nature, which means eyes, the supervision. And what does Krishna say in this very chapter? Maya jakshena prakati suyate sacharasaram. That I am overseeing the workings of nature, and because I'm superintending, everything is going on. Jagat Viparivartame, the whole universe is working, and when you contemplate it, it's an incredibly complex machine. That the existence of the material energy alone, if you actually contemplate it in an open frame of mind, is itself proof of the existence of God. Or let's say proof of the existence of a supreme intelligence who has organized this incredibly complex thing, what we call the material world. So now back to this verse. Samoham savabhuteshu. He's declaring there said, I am neutral, somewhat equally disposed. The word sama is very close to the word same. I deal with people with complete equanimity. I'm not biased at all. Name dveshosti napriya. None are I'm not hateful toward anyone, dvesha, nor am I partial to them. But then the next line, ye bhajandi tamam bhaktya, those who worship me with devotion, and that is in our hand. We can do that or we can not do that. But for those who do that sincerely, mayate teshu chapiham, they are in me and I am in them. Now, what does that really mean? It means that Krishna really, as Prabhupada explains, quoting from Krishna himself, as they surrender unto me, as they worship, I reward them accordingly. We just had the verse, how does that go? Now, whatever you worship, whoever... Yanti Deva. Yanti Deva Vata Devan, Pintrit Yanti Patrivita. Bhutani Yanti Bhuje, Yanti Bhunjajanopimam. Whoever you worship. Now, what is this worship? Worship is an important concept, and to analyze it. It first means that you're paying attention, right? And then you're seeing in that worshipable person or thing or whatever it is, some power that awes you at least, and oftentimes seems to offer you something. In other words, if you worship this particular ghost in this particular tree, then you can kill your enemy. This is worship in the mode of ignorance. I was explaining that when I was in Miami. We'd have visitors from Brazil, and they would tell us stories about how this kind of worship is going on. I forget what they call it, but it's very prominent in Brazil. People will go out, and they'll drink a little bit, smoke cigars, offer something to a tree, and sing songs, I guess. I don't know what they do. But they think they're getting something from that. So, but what does it begin with? I like to give the example of politics. The political season in America now is all pervading. It's always going on, right? There's always planning the next election, or implementing the last election. So, first of all, there is the idea that the politician can benefit you, that this person is promising something that you want. Right, and a whole class of people may say, "Oh, yeah, that's what we need that." So you're trusting them. You're convinced that they will have the power to do what they're promising to do, and that they will do it. They're honest. There's a lot of things going on in there, and it's a form of worship. You're also giving donations. Just like people come to a temple here, or let's say more relative, they'll go to a church or mosque, and they're praying, as Krishna says in the 7th chapter. Four kinds of pious people come to me. They're not all looking for pure devotional service. Janasugan arto jigyasur artarti gyani chabadatarshava. Many people go, even just out of habit, because of trouble that they're in. Mental, physical, financial, whatever it is, some kind of suffering. Or they're kind of okay now, but they want to make sure they don't suffer at all, so in the future, so they'll pay for that. But it's all on the basis of relieving the material suffering. That's called the arto. They're sukriti, they're pious, rather than saying, there's no God, we're going to figure it out and manipulate the material energy, which is also prominent today. Jigyasu, some are just curious, which is a good platform, to be curious what's going on there in the Hare Krishna temple or whatever. Arthati, money, need money. It's kind of a species of having trouble. If you can't pay your rent, that's trouble. So let me go get some money so I can pay the rent. So all of these are pious, and then but the best, the one that Krishna says in 2 verses, these are the best is jnanis. In other words, someone who generally wants to understand the science of God, they're really dear to me. And he culminates in the praise of them with this famous verse, Bahunam Janmanamante, Jnanaman Mam Papadjite. That after many, many births of cultivating knowledge, real knowledge from real sources, one who is truly in knowledge will surrender unto me. Understanding that I, Vasudeva, am everything. Not that everything is God, but that God is present in everything, and everything is His energy. And such a Mahatma is very, very rare. This is one of the definitions of a Mahatma. So, notice that the development of this Mahatma platform is in the hands of the person himself. He's cultivating the knowledge, but the question is, how is he cultivating it? Is how he or she is cultivating it? The receptivity, and when you really come to the conclusion of the knowledge, do you actually surrender to Krishna? Because that should be the result. So at that point, Krishna reciprocates. I mean, he's reciprocating all the time, but he reciprocates in the most wonderful way at that time. And oftentimes the way that he'll reciprocate first is a lot of your anxiety is relieved when you surrender and you really say, yes, I'm really part and parcel of Krishna, I'm His eternal servant, and let me try to live that life as far as possible. And I pointed out to Badrinath Maharaj this mudra. Radharani has this mudra, Abhaidan mudra. He wanted me to research it a little more. And it appears once in one purport in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that very phrase, Abhaidan mudra, the hand gesture that bestows fearlessness. Radharani is saying, don't worry, just like Krishna says at the end of the Sarvadharman, don't worry, surrender to me, worship us, Radha and Krishna, and all your problems will be solved. Don't be in anxiety, It's very, and Maharaj was saying in the letter, the email, that I'm already feeling the protective Shakti coming just by thinking about it.
There's a shortcut to Krishna too.
We have to approach Krishna through Radharani, through service. So the proper conclusion after reading this verse, Samoham Sarvabhuteshu, it should be very encouraging, is that, and we see that nobody is barred. In other words, Christians say, you're not a Brahmin, you weren't born as a Brahmin, pray to get a Brahmin next birth, no, it's not like that. And in Krishna's dealings, and in especially Lord Chaitanya's dealings, a perfect example, Jagai Madhai, yes, they were born as Brahmins, but they had fallen from that platform and they became rogues and rascals. They saw Nityananda, he told them to chant Hare Krishna, and Madhai threw a shard of a pot and injured his forehead. And what did Nityananda do? Said, you rascal. No. He said, don't worry about the blood, just chant Hare Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya arrived. Now, he had the chakra, he was ready to annihilate them. But they surrendered, and what happened is that Madhai was going to throw another piece of pot, and Jagai stopped him. He came to his senses and says, no, he's a saintly person, you idiot, stop it, And so he got a special mercy when Lord Chaitanya came, and Nityananda said, this Jagai, he saved me the second time. Oh, okay, so you're blessed, like that. But the point was that after all they had done, even attacking Nityananda, because they surrendered, because they were recommended by Nityananda, they got the mercy, they were accepted by Lord Chaitanya. And he said to the other devotees, don't regard them, don't judge them at all by what they've done before. Now they're just as intimate servants of me as you are. And they had an instant transformation. We're also reading, in the morning about Jamil. Jamila was another interesting case. A Brahmin who fell away, became a rogue and a rascal all his life, but then got the blessing of someone who was a sage, I don't know the story, I'm going to try to research it, who recommended that he name his last son. He was like over 80 years old, he had a little child, so that itself is obviously not very saintly. But there was a child, and he said, oh, you should name this child Narayan. And Jamil, vaguely remembered, yes, I remember my old days as a Brahmin. Okay, that's a good idea. So he named his last son as Narayan. So there he is, 82 years old, calling his little boy, Narayan, come over, sit on my lap. Narayan, come, take your breakfast. So he's chanting the name. And the whole point of it is that Krishna is so merciful that if somehow or other you chant his name, without offense, and this is another technical thing we won't get into right now, but he was chanting without offense because he wasn't like thinking, oh, this is great, I can do all the sins I want and then just chant once or twice Narayan and I'll be free. No, that wasn't his mentality. That itself is very offensive and you're not going to make much progress. But he was generally just calling his son Narayan. So it was Nama Bas. It wasn't Nama Parad. Anyway, so he was delivered. He was saved at the last possible second by the Vaishnavas. I know, Vishnu Dutas, but in the purport, Prabhupada called it the Vaishnavas. They're actually Vishnu Dutas, the messengers of Vishnu. I pointed that out to the, in one of the class lessons I gave, that you go out and you're trying to distribute books. What are you but a messenger of Vishnu, a messenger of Krishna? You're a Vishnu Duta. That's what Vishnu Duta means, Vishnu's messengers. So, and you're performing the same function. You're delivering the souls. Now, they may not be willing to take it, but if someone takes a book, reads it, becomes curious, and visits the temple, you save somebody, just as we've been saved. Somebody gave me a book, someone invited me to the temple, So this is, and you become favored by Krishna. So all of, if you just contemplate, I easily contemplate, before I ever heard about Krishna, I was a total atheist. I like to point out, I was raised as an Orthodox communist, not as a Jew, not as my father used to read to me Das Kapital, a nice English translation. That's Karl Marx's main book. And I saw the world through those, that lens. But somehow or other, by maybe a previous life or something, life took a turn, and I came in touch with Hatha Yoga first. To get my health back. I ran my health down living in Manhattan, so then I came, and I started, and in that yoga studio was a future famous devotee named Amala Bhakta. He was then called, I think, Shiva Prem Swami or something like that. He was a Swami. And he was teaching Hatha Yoga, and I was doing bending and stretching, and then he taught us a verse. Some of you you'll recognize this verse. Apavitro pavitro va savavastam gatopiya yaksmenet pundarikaksham sabaya byantarashuchihi. This is a verse that anyone who gets initiated recognizes, because that's what you chant. So it means purified or impurified. It's very pertinent to the subject matter here. Purified or impurified. Apavitro, impure, or pavitro va. Sarvavastam, any situation you may be in. Gatopiva. Yaksmarate pundarikaksham. Anyone who remembers the lotus-eyed Lord, pundarikaksham, sabhaya byantarashuchi, becomes purified within and without. Just think of the blessing of that. It's like a you would say that, well, is that really fair? I committed so many sins. I killed these Brahmins in my previous life. I'm getting, I'm just a total rascal. And yet, I remembered Pundarikaksha because I happened to visit the temple, or I saw, this parade that the Hare Krishnas had down Fifth Avenue, and there was this form. They told me it was Jagannath. And I said, that's curious. What is that? And because of that, now so many eons of sin are eradicated. And the answer is yes. So Krishna, he's not envious of anyone. Meaning, a little note on Prabhupada's use of language. In England, the word envious means not only jealous, which is basically what it means here, but it also means bearing enmity toward, bearing malice toward someone. And Prabhupada would sometimes use it that way. I remember, I think it was in the Krishna book or something, we should not be envious even of an ant. Well, that's pretty easy. I mean, what do they got that I want, No, means we shouldn't disregard their right to live. We should, make sure we don't step on them if we can possibly. So Krishna is saying here, samoham samabhuteshu, that I'm not biased toward anyone. But according to their way they deal with me, and especially how they deal with my devotees, I will deal with them just appropriately. Now it's interesting, in Vrindavan, in Braj Leela, Vrindavan Leela, we like to remember, at least I like to remember, all the wonderful sweet pastimes Krishna's playing with his friends. He's dallying with the gopis, especially with his mother, and all of these beautiful pastimes. But we should remember that there's also this theme of Kamsa's in there and trying to kill him, and he keeps sending these demons. And so, there's Bakasura, and there's Agasura, and there's Vatsasura, and there's all these asuras, and Krishna's killing them. He may be doing it playfully and having fun doing it, but it's pretty heavy, especially the coward boys are witnessing all this, and then they're so relieved when Krishna, slew them. So Krishna's exactly reciprocating. He's reciprocating with them as they're trying to kill him. Well, he'll deliver them, purify them by killing them. They're blessed by his killing them personally like that. There's all these backstories. You read this, I think it's the Garga Samhita. There's a lot of backstories. Who was Putana? I forget who she was exactly, but there was a special reason why that particular living entity became that witch and was blessed. It's an amazing story. I mean, among all the demons that he killed, for me, Putana was beyond the pale. Killing little babies and drinking their blood? Is there like a worse demon you could imagine? Someone that's evil like that? Really evil. And, disguising herself as a beautiful lady so she could come in, and kill Krishna. But she got a special benediction. Krishna sucked her breast. She had poured, smeared it with poison, which of course didn't affect Krishna. And she lost her life in that way, and then she took on her 8-mile-long, or whatever it was, 10-mile-long body, 13? Long, huge body. And everyone was just, shocked, But what was her destination? I mean, the body of Putana was there, they burned it. But amazingly, it smelled like a guru scent because she was purified, her body was purified. But what was the destination of that soul that was in the body of Putana? She became a wet nurse of Krishna, an aid of Yashoda in the spiritual world. Because Krishna disregarded the old poison, and he took, she suckled me, so I'll give her a position, my mother. So Uddhava says, Kang Padayalam Sharanam Bhajema. Who can I take shelter of who could be more merciful, more compassionate than Krishna? I mean, if someone tries to kill you, it's really hard to have a positive feeling toward them, right? You have to do all you can to not hate them, whatever you can. But here Krishna, because of the way he did it, he blessed her, purifying. So this is what it means to be samoham savabhuteshu. That Krishna has no, first of all, he claims every living entity as his child. What is it? Sarvabhuteshu. What is it? Yeah, that's the last line. What's the first line of the verse? Sarva yonisha kontiya murtiya sambhavantiya tasam brahma mahayona aham bija padakvata. Thank you. So in the 14th chapter, near the beginning, he's saying that all living entities who exist, I am the seed-giving Father. So he is the Father of all. And he says in the end of the 5th chapter, Suridam sarvabhutanam hrideshe junatishtati, that I am the well-wishing friend of every living entity within the heart as a supersoul. So that means that even if it's perfect nonsense who never thinks of God and is, even a low-grade demon, not very powerful, but practically no redeeming saintly qualities, supersoul is still in there, trying to give good instruction and guiding him, getting just desserts, as I explained, and it gets another chance. Nobody is annihilated. Everybody eventually comes back, the soul eventually purified, comes back to the human form. And then, if one can get the association even for a few moments of a pure devotee, one can get the clue of how to use this human form of life properly. Because it's only the human form of life where you can take up the process of devotional service and consciously become purified and become very dear to Krishna, even in this life. So this verse is very key. Those who worship me with bhakti, and that's what we're trying to do with devotion, then Krishna really, really looks out for you. He's personally involved in trying to guide you, manage your karma. You're not getting the regular karma, managing your karma so that it will move you in the right direction. Okay, this person is not as serious as should be, so get a little touch of bad karma to get them serious. That happens all the time, you know. What does he say? I always forget it, the verse when I'm supposed to. That for those who I show my real mercy, I gradually take away their wealth. Does anyone know that word? What is it? Tanangshanai. How do they say Tanangshanai? That's the second line. Brain's going. But what does that mean? He's taking away my wealth? I went to church praying that I could pay my rent, and he's taking away my wealth. Because that's our disease. We're relying on this material energy and our ability to manipulate it to try to navigate this material world, and that's a complete mistake. That's just prolonging the agony. We should embrace a life of simple living, as simple as possible. Not getting entangled in the material energy. And whenever possible, as we read yesterday, anasakta sabishayan, wherever possible, use the material energy in Krishna's service. Link it, and that includes our own body. If we're using our voice and our mind to think of Krishna, glorify Krishna, and our hands to serve Krishna, then we're becoming purified. And we're feeling more and more free of the anxiety of those who are trying to manipulate this material energy and failing at every step, which is what we've been doing for millions of births. So we want to come to the second line there, where we worship Krishna in devotion, and we feel Krishna's presence in us, and we feel our presence in Him, and that He's protecting us and providing for us. So that's the meaning of this verse. Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. Let's go on. Now all these verses are really significant. They're all significant, but they're very well known now. Apichet suraracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadureva samantavya samyag bhavasito hi saha. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Now Prabhupada gives some warnings about not trying to purport. The word surarachara used in this verse is very significant, and we should understand it properly. When the living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional, and the other is constitutional. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees, in connection with the conditional life, and such activities are called conditional. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness, or the devotional service of the Lord, has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. He knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some act which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically. But such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. The material contamination is so strong that even a yogi fully engaged in the service of the Lord sometimes becomes ensnared. But Krishna consciousness is so strong that such an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Therefore, the process of devotional service is always a success. No one should deride a devotee for some accidental fall down from the ideal path, for as explained in the next verse, such occasional fall downs will be stopped in due course as soon as the devotee is completely situated in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person who is situated in Krishna consciousness and is engaged with determination in the process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, should be considered to be in the transcendental position, even if by chance or accident he is found to have fallen. The words sadhur eva, he is saintly, are very emphatic. They are a warning to the non-devotees that because of an accidental fall down, a devotee should not be derided. He should still be considered saintly even if he has accidentally fallen down. And the word mantavya is still more emphatic. If one does not follow this rule and derides a devotee for his accidental fall down, then one is disobeying the order of the Supreme Lord. The only qualification of a devotee is to be unflinchingly and exclusively engaged in devotional service. In the Nrsimha Purana, the following statement is given: Bhagavati chahadav ananyacheta vishamalino pibavajate manushyaha nahi shashikalusha chabir nahi shashikalusha chabi kadachit timadapadabhapatam upayiti chandra. The meaning is that even if one fully engaged in devotional service of the Lord is sometimes found engaged in abominable activities, these activities should be considered to be like the spots that resemble the mark of a rabbit on the moon. Such spots do not become an impediment to the diffusion of moonlight. Similarly, the accidental fall down of a devotee from the path of saintly character does not make him abominable. On the other hand, one should not misunderstand that a devotee in transcendental or devotional service can act in all kinds of abominable ways. This verse only refers to an accident due to the strong power of material connections. Devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But when one is strong enough, he is no longer subjected to such fall downs, as previously explained. No one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think that he is still a devotee. If he does not improve in his character by devotional service, then he is to be understood that he is not a high devotee. So, this and the next verse are very well known. And Prabhupada would often cite this verse to describe who is a sadhu. And he would not start with the beginning of the verse, but he would say, Bhajate mam ananyabhak sadhudeva samantavya. That someone who is worshipping me unflinchingly, without deviation, is known as a sadhu. Now we have in the third canto, chapter 25, beginning text 20, we have 8 verses describing the importance of associating with a sadhu. And in those verses, Lord Kapila Dev, he describes very carefully what a sadhu is. And this is a famous verse, Tikshaba, Karunika, Suridak Sarvadehinam, Ajata Shattavakshanta, Sadhavak Sadhabhushana. So a real sadhu is tolerant and at the same time compassionate because he's giving out Krishna consciousness. So that's a characteristic. Only someone who is really urgently feeling the misery of people who don't know anything about Krishna can tolerate all the difficulties of trying to preach the unfaithful and undergoing all the perfect example of Jesus Christ. Prabhupada would cite him as a perfect example of tolerance of a sadhu. So Suridaksa Ajata Shatravak Shanta. Again, this is the idea that he has no enmity. His enemy is not born. Now you say, well, my goodness, Prahlad Maharaj was certainly a sadhu, but he had a big enemy. His father was his enemy. How can he say he has no enemy? It's a part of the language. It means that he has no enmity toward anyone. He doesn't regard anyone else as an enemy, but they may regard him as an enemy. And that's what his father was. So, Shanta. And because he's free, is always engaged in devotional service, free of material desire, free of envy toward anyone, is peaceful. Shanta. Sadhu bhakt sadhu. These are the ornaments of a real sadhu. And then how does he get that way? Because there's no mention of any devotional service in this verse. Next verse. Kapila Dev, in his role as an incarnation of Krishna, says, Maya ananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti ye dvidham. The sadhu, this is another quality, is worshipping me with undeviating intention. Ananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti ye dvidham, with great determination. And how? What's the evidence of this? Matkute tyakta karmanas tyakta swajana bandhava. For my sake, such a devotee will give up any activity that's against devotional service, and even separate himself from friends and family if their association is an impediment to his devotion. Now this is, the example. And what does he do? How does he stay enlivened? Marashaya katam rishta shinvandi katayanti cha. He's always hearing and chanting glorification of myself, which is very rishta, very attractive and sweet. And because he's always absorbed, he's not suffering from the threefold miseries like an ordinary person. The mind is absorbed in me. And with perfect example, again, Prahlad Maharaj. It's inconceivable. His father, had him thrown into a boiling pot of oil. Can you imagine it? What that feels like? Prahlad was just so absorbed, Hare Krishna, that he didn't feel anything. He's protected by Krishna. So this is the sadhu, and even if there is some accidental or some unintentional activity that's suduracharo, very abominable, that can be overlooked and that can be easily reconciled if one is truly practicing Krishna consciousness with great attention and intensity. So, and he quotes this verse. Now, there's another verse Prabhupada cites here, but he didn't quote the Sanskrit, and that is Swapada Moolam Bhajadak Priyasya Tyaktjanya Bhava Sahadi Padesha Vikarma Yakcho Patitam Kachantit Dunoti Sarvam Mridisannivishta. This is the other verse he's trying. Swapada Moolam Bhajadak, who's always worshipping, at the root of my lotus feet, Pada Mula, or at Krishna's lotus feet. Bhajadak Tyaktjanya Bhava, having given up any other sentimentality, one pointed, Tyaktjanya Bhava Hari Padesha. He's worshipping the Supreme Lord, Hari. Then, Vikarma Yatcho Patitam Kadanchana, somehow or other, some vikarma he performs, and Dunoti Sarvam, the Lord cleanses it away because of the flood of bhakti that he's doing. He becomes pure. But again, in this next verse, Prabhupada will especially warn us against trying to take advantage of this, because it's one of these situations where you can easily try to misinterpret and try an excuse to say, well, I can do anything, and then just get chant again. But then you're sinning on the strength of chanting, which is said to be sometimes the greatest offense. What does that mean, sinning on the strength of chanting? It means intentionally thinking, as you're about to perform some nonsensical, non-devotional, sinful activity, no problem. I read in the book how you just chant Hare Krishna and then all the sins are gone. I got a perfect excuse. Prabhupada gives the example of, Christians who go to church on the Saturdays, confess, and then week starts, off again. It doesn't work like that. And Krishna sees how insincere. And what will happen is we forget, but it's Krishna's grace and blessing and inspiration and that we're even allowed to chant. You'll forget about chanting. Who cares about this nonsense, It's all, you can easily be covered to the extent that it's just, that Hare Krishna, yeah, I lived in the temple for 6 months when I was about 21 years old, and now I'm 35. That was a stage I went through, Now I'm really real life, working hard. So you're living the dream, in the dream, thinking that the reality, which is Krishna and the Krishna Bhakti, is the dream world. That's happened. Thousands of devotees used to be in this movement. What is that? It's a razor's edge. Razor's edge means if you allow yourself to be affected and infected by the material energy and material ideas, especially through bad association, and it doesn't have to come. It can come through media, just like Krishna consciousness can come through media. Maya can also come through the media. And then the doubts arise, and meanwhile, you're not chanting enough, you're not getting enough Harinam, and you're missing your rounds. And you become weak, you become prey for Maya's allurements. I've seen it, Hare Krishna. Any comments on this verse? Yes, Vaishnava. We have the mic there, right behind you. Please turn it on.
Hare Krishna. Are there any exceptions to apichat?
Any acceptance?
Any exceptions?
To the,
Any acts of that would invalidate this verse?
You mean the most so abominable that
Yes, so abominable that.
Can I take the fifth on that one?
Okay. Especially now, okay.
Krishna said it, and I would like to read some of the Baladev's commentary. How he takes it. We have seen, unfortunately, in the history of this movement, that there are some activities that are so about that you're not allowed to associate with devotees anymore in ISKCON, anyway, for the greater protection of the whole society and the other devotees. So even though Krishna may forgive you, but you can be a devotee, but not in ISKCON. That happens like that. When you're running a society like this, where it's so important to maintain the wholesomeness of the association, and it just becomes very, very difficult to maintain it with certain activities. Anyway, that's as far as I want to take that. But you're right. It's a sticky wicket, we used to say. Anyway, but the principle, of course, is valid, and yeah. Yes, Dharma.
I don't have a book, but I think in the beginning it said even a yogi who is fully engaged in the service of the Lord can become ensnared or fall down.
Well, that's true. I don't see it here in the purport to Apichetaracharu, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, I wish I could find exactly what it sounded like. If you're fully absorbed, isn't that the only way to be protected? So what else can you do?
Well, the thing is, it's the devotees think, all right, I got so many years under my belt now. I've been doing this regularly. I'm on the safe side. The point is, surrendering to Krishna is like a moment-to-moment thing. You can surrender, every day for 10 years, but then in the day of the 11th year, you're less surrendered. Until you come to the process of pure prema bhakti. Even King Bharat didn't quite get there. He came to Baba, right? But he wasn't. So you have your free will. How did we get here in the first place? Even from the spiritual world, we had our free will. We turned away from Krishna. So we're kind of reenacting that every day. Otherwise, we'd be pure devotees. We try and remember Krishna, but then we do something that stops that, and we forget Krishna. So, oftentimes it's all right. So, but you're not doing anything grossly abominable. But the point is that that even if you're absorbed, if you're not aware of your Swarup city and actually living it moment to moment, where there's no, then you're not going to fall down. But you could be, pretty advanced, and still the infection can come in there. So that's why there's this pastime where Prabhupada was seen praying fervently before the deities, and one devotee asked him, Prabhupada, what are you praying for? He said, I'm praying that I don't fall down. And the devotee said, Prabhupada, you're a pure devotee, you can't fall down. Because I'm always praying. What does it mean to be chanting Hare Krishna 24 hours a day? Obviously some of it has to be internal. You're sleeping. It means that at every moment you're in that mood of supplicating the Lord, please let me, stay at your lotus feet. Let me serve your lotus feet. Please, forgive me for all my sins. The great devotees really, really feel that they're very fallen, and therefore they urgently and ardently, pray for Krishna's protection and the service. And that feeling of urgency and sincerity is what keeps them safe. That's where the safe side is. The danger is when you feel complacent. You say, I've been doing it for some time now. I'm good. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. No, we're never good until we get back to the lotus feet in Goloka Vrindavan. So it's a science.
Someone told me once this is crazy for Krishna, meaning it's always in your head. You're always chanting Hare Krishna in your head.
Yeah, yeah. All right, it's kind of late. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.